We're recording now. Okay. So, what does the writer say about how race is connected to class?
Um,
I sorry, I feel like there was no like connection between race and class.
I think that was her point. Like, they're two different things, and they like oppose each other. Like, you can't really
Yeah,
be both.
Hmm.
yeah, that's what I got. It's like you're either black or you're middle class. So that's how that's connected. Um, what difficulties are there with being both black and middle class?
I think that it was hard for the author to like talk about like to be black but also be middle class. Like, whenever she was like in a situation where it sounded like she was more often in like a situation to be middle class kind of.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And then when she was also supposed to be black in that situation, it was like really hard because really being middle class, you still were black because you were black, but you didn't have those like those black traits that come with being oppressed and being like poor. And so those have
Yeah,
become what being black is. And so
Hmm.
she or the author couldn't really be that because she wasn't poor. It's a girl, right?
yeah. I think Shelby. I'm not sure if that's. I think it's a guy actually.
Really?
Could be. I think he's a
Yeah,
guy.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like it was just
Sorry.
hard to be black because all the things, especially during that time, that like were associated with being black was kind of related to being poor, but
Hmm.
the author wasn't poor, so like it always they never were. The person was never able to be both those things at once.
Yeah. Like he talks about his professor's blindness. He says like his so like this boy was telling him like, oh, you speak good English and stuff, and
Mhm.
the boy was like, I wouldn't do that. Like I don't want to speak like you though. And he said because if he did speak proper English and stuff like that, then he wouldn't be black anymore.
Yeah.
And then Sir was saying something um, about white or like black people. Oh shoot. Well, he says that his professor is blind from racism, and like he made a comment. Shoot, I'm trying to find the quote from it. Uh,
Is it something like either choose to be black or be part of the class?
mhm. Well,
I don't remember what the comment was. I read that part kind of fast.
yeah. Well, then he like gets upset that his professor can like talk to him in certain ways, like against black people,
Yeah.
and then like, he doesn't like recognize the professor doesn't recognize like I am a black person. Like just because I'm smart and stuff doesn't mean that I'm not black, and we didn't go through these difficult times.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, okay, let's see. Then it says, what expectations to whites and or blacks wait, do whites and or blacks have about black people? What expectations?
Wait. What was that again?
What expectations do whites and blacks have about black people?
I think that they expect them to be um, kind of like maybe like not as educated or like a lot of times people associate black people with like violence or like things
Yeah.
like that. And so I think that it would be really hard to be or even just to have that experience of growing up somewhere where it's like really rough in like a really rough neighborhood because, you know what I mean, like a lot of Black people do grow up in areas like that.
Mhm.
And so to have that, like, just that is a normal thing to be thought of, you know what I mean, about Black people, and
Yeah.
to not fall under that, I think that would be like awkward to say the least, or like kind of confusing to have an identity as a Black person if you aren't poor or aren't as like kind of victimized, like aren't as much of a victim of the oppression maybe as most other Black people are, you know?
Mhm.
Like,
Well, and then the situation with his father, when his father the came out of the lower class, like he broke out of that expectation of what people like expect blacks to be, because he didn't see like he saw the values of like hard work and all these things. He wasn't that victim. Like it says that I don't know, it talks about like blacks being victimized, but his father didn't look at it like that. But there are expectations of blacks being a certain way, um, like in lower class and staying there. And then blacks feel like they are betraying other blacks when they reach and become more
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
lower class. Um, Sorry, it says like we're supposed to give quotes and stuff. Discussion. I should write these, but I always forget the quotes. Define.
Here's a good one. It says, middle class Blacks need to identify racially. It is better to think of ourselves as Black and victimized than not Black at all. So we contrive more unconsciously than consciously to fit ourselves
Mhm.
into an identity that denies our class and fails to address the true source of our vulnerability.
So, do you feel like this person, like, because you know, in the beginning, he talks about his friend
Yeah.
and how his friends, like, is like, oh, there is no such thing as black middle class. You're either black or you're middle class, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out, like, how the writer identifies.
I think the writer is saying that you can be both. Like, you are both because you are middle class. Like, it's impossible to just be one of those. If you're middle class and you're Black, like, it's impossible just to be middle class. It's impossible just to be Black. But society does expect you to just be Black. And I think that's what it's kind of trying to say. Like, society does expect you to be middle class and completely, like, abandon your Black heritage and your color, or it expects you to completely abandon the advantages that you've had and the like education and the like
Yeah,
affluence that you live in within being middle class and just kind of like be and act as though you're lower class Black, which is typically less educated. You know what I mean? So I think that they're saying that, of course, as a middle class Black person, you are middle class and you are Black because you have both those influences in your life. But society doesn't allow you to be that
Mm-hmm.
without a lot of struggle because in every different social situation, you're going to have to choose one of those and you're going to lean more on one of those than the other because they don't exactly coexist.
yeah. The ending, like, he's he explains that he gets annoyed when he hears other black people say like that because you made it and you're, you know, you reached middle class, you need to reach back and help other less fortunate black people, as and he says as if middle class status were an unearned and essentially passive condition. And he so it's like frustrating for him, like you have to put effort and sacrifice or you're going to remain where you are, and it has nothing to do with your color. Like, so I think people like they black is a color, but they are making it like it's a whole Like,
well, it actually is like a lot harder. Like,
harder, yeah.
it is like definitely something that like is validated in that they are victims, because they are victims, like
Yeah.
100%, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, it is bad that they're victims, but it's not like
It happened though. I
they
believe things like that can
they're
happen.
factually victims of our like society and of our, you know what I mean? And so I think that I didn't really read the end of it, but I think that um I think that it is important to recognize that like they are like
In the end, he says, to move beyond the victim focused Black identity, we must learn to make a difficult but crucial distinction between actual victimization, which we must resist with every resource, and identification with the victim's status. Until we do this, we will continue to wrestle more with ourselves than with the new opportunities which so many paid so dearly to win. So
yes.
he's like frustrated that people just can't, like, yes, all those things happen, and it is frustrating. They were victims, but you can't let that be something that holds you back. Like, what, we have new opportunities these days, you know, to make something of yourself, and it might be harder than others, but you still are given the opportunity. That's what, like, he's trying to get at. And it also says, um, let's see. Oh, I don't know, but he's trying to like this. I guess he's like showing that you can be Black and be all these things that like whites are. You know, I don't know. Um, well, that was towards the ending. Usually will have always, regardless of the past, present, these laws. Yeah, so he's saying like, regardless of past or present victimization, these laws of advancement apply absolutely to Black Americans also. So there's possibilities for all people. But he does recognize that in doing these things and like doing better for yourself, there are people that have that negative image of Blacks being middle class. And I think it's harder for him because like they are the same people. Just because he's doing better doesn't mean I'm like less Black than the, you know, like than you are, kind of thing. So like he struggled with people looking at him as less, or people thinking that he's betraying their race by becoming middle class or by doing more than what other people are doing. But for him, it was, I'm using my American opportunity that people have fought for to get where I'm at, because that's what people wanted from the beginning. Like, that's what Blacks were fighting for from the beginning, was for equality and to be able to do something for themselves. But there's people that are still holding themselves back by being victimized, I guess. Um, so the response that has to be written is giving a statement about what the writer has to say about the combination of being Black and middle class.
Yeah. I got that.
Okay.
All right. I think we're good, probably.
Okay. Thanks, guys.